Are we live?
We appear live. Are we alive is the question.
We are energized.
Of course.
So Ken, bonjour.
Bonjour and bonsoir to all.
So dear friends, very exciting time today. We're going to be having the topic of our life. It's going to be all about the history of California. It's going to be about the essence of being born in this amazing state. It's going to be the sense of the pioneering energy. It's going to be about talking about what makes American wine and California so unique and special. So today I thought of only one guest. We've been friends together for now decades. It's sad to say, but we both born on the same vintage. Almost.
Almost.
Him 10 years later than I do. 1979, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And Ken, Hoernlein on top of it, is my brother from another father and mother, but still my brother. So dear friends, he runs the entire sales organization and many more. And I thought it would be so exciting not only for you to meet him further, but at the same time to talk with him about really what runs through his body. Everywhere in his vessel is the ultimate grape that really makes California so unique. That is
Zinfandel, of course.
Oh la 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 la. So Ken, welcome on JCB Live Wine Style. Can you believe, dear friends, that we are together? And now, Ken, 6th generation Californians. Share with us, how does it feel?
Oh, you know, it's an interesting feeling because so many people are living in California, and I welcome them to come here because it's honestly God's country. It's a dream to be here. The weather's magical. The grapes are amazing. The wine is the best in the world. It's great to be able to share it with everyone. And, you know, my family definitely were some of the early pioneers that were here. In fact, Zinfandel was the reason that they came to America in the first place. My great-great-grandfather was a shipbuilder in Scotland. And being a shipbuilder, he was exposed to
So
lead.
this is why, dear friends, I'm wearing my Scottish jacket.
Yes, you're wearing your
This
tartan.
is really to bring the origin,
Very
the birth.
very close to our tartan as well. By the way.
Yes.
Yes. So he was suffering from lead poisoning from the paint that was used to paint the bottom of the hulls of the ships at the time to prevent rot. And his doctor said, you know, the very, very best thing that you can do, and he was given a very short lifespan. He was in his early 20s when this happened, early to mid 20s. Said, go to California. They have amazing grapes in California, specifically Zinfandel. It will help purge the lead out of your body.
No.
Fast forward.
So it was a doctor's advice who gave him the thoughts of coming to the West Coast.
Yes.
And to drink wine.
Yep, to come to Hillsburg specifically and to drink, to eat
Not to
Zinfandel
digress,
grapes.
but do you think it's maybe a good cure for COVID-19 to drink more Zinfandel?
Well, I think drinking more Zinfandel will maybe keep you inside the house a little longer. So yes, maybe it is a good preventative.
Well, good advice.
Yes. Yeah, so, you know, and he came with the family. They bought some property, planted grapes and plums. We were also prune farmers as well. But, you know, sadly, my grandfather did pass of a heart attack, but he was 92 years old.
Well, that's a good track
So
record.
not too bad. I think the Zinfandel did a great job for him.
So you were born on that same farm.
I was born into a 5-generation household.
Oh.
When I came home from the hospital, there's a picture of all 5 generations.
You were not
together in the
even
living
born
room.
right there in the vineyards?
I actually was born in the hospital. Yes.
Because I could imagine that your mother kept working,
Yes.
like in a Monty Python movie, and suddenly you fall between her
Right.
legs, and she keeps doing what she's doing.
And I start hoeing the weeds between the vines, of course. Yes. No, born in the hospital, but
But tell us if your first ever beverage, before even your mother's milk, Ken, was it really Zinfandel? Because that's the story I've heard throughout Hillsburg.
you know, I don't think my mother would admit to it or my grandparents, but there was certainly a little glass of wine at every meal for me.
Well, why don't we drink to that?
Yes.
Was it similar to that lovely, delicious Zinfandel? Because I understand, and we'll go back to your family, of course, but this is one of your favorite Zinfandel.
Well, you know what's so great about Deloche Zinfandel is that it's the home is in Russian River, which is an absolutely magical place to grow Zinfandel. Very few places in California, let alone the world, can grow top quality Zinfandel. And what's beautiful about Russian River is that cool climate. You get a great shift between daytime and nighttime temperatures. So you get these lush, fruity, rich wines that have acidic structure that pair magically with food. They're great to drink on their own. Really, when you think about it, Russian River is the top place.
And I would give that to my younger child. So I would agree with your mother.
Cut it with a little water, perhaps. It's maybe
you became
a
wine
aficionado,
aficionado, a wine expert, a fabulous taster, right? So Ken, so well said on Russian River, which we'll come back to, of course, later as well. But tell us more about what was it that made you who you are, thanks to that great ranch, that family spirits, and enjoying those great grapes that makes America so unique.
Yeah, I mean, I think sense of family and place, excuse me, is very crucial to that in building who you are. You know, I was born into a hardworking family where every generation was out. You know, if they weren't working on the ranch, they were working somewhere in town, and then they were working on the ranch when they came back. And to have 5 generations that were involved in that, and if you weren't working in the ranch, you were working in the home, you were making we ate our big meal at lunch because we were working. Exactly. You didn't eat it at dinner.
1:30, 2 p.m.?
About 12, because we'd get up before the sun rose, do our work, come in, have breakfast, do another 4 or 5 hours of work, have a big lunch.
Wow.
And then quit working usually around 5 or 6, and you would get a little bit of relaxation time. But then usually my grandfather would haul me out to the shop and we start working on the tractor or doing some welding. So I learned a very strong work ethic being on the ranch. You know, there's no putting things off. There's a timeline to nature that you have to follow. If you don't follow it, you won't be successful. And I think that has served me well in business because there's a timeline and a cycle to that as well.
Yes, and I can guarantee and vouch for that, Ken has an amazing work ethic. So, talking about ethic, there's a big debate, Ken, on the origin of Zinfandel. I've heard it's Italian, I've heard it's Croatian, I've heard even the Germans claim a little bit of it, maybe the Austrians as well.
Of course.
I know, and we all know it was an empire for some time, and very tied together. But what is your version?
As a long, coming from a long family of California, I would say the origin of Zinfandel is California.
It's time to serve him another one. So, of
course, we know genetically. I mean, we live in a magical world where we have science and we've traced the DNA. And in fact, the origins of Zinfandel are Croatia.
Well, if I was Italian today, if I was from the north of Italy, if I was just from the Veneto region, if I was looking at the Dolomite beautiful mountains, I would say it's Italian.
And you can make that claim because Italy, like many countries of Europe, were much larger at one point, and Croatia is across the Aegean Sea from Italy, and at the time was part of Italy.
So that explains the why. Yes. And the why explains the reason it is. But now, I understand there's a man who brought it to the United States of America. Isn't it this lovely wine that we got to have a toast to him because don't we love him? Dear friends, listen to the sound. Ken, by the way, why do you like this glass? Because I know at first you didn't like it at all.
Well, there's a quick funny story here with Jean-Charles on this glass. This is a glass that Jean-Charles designed with Baccarat. Been a lifelong dream of his to be a vintner who helps design something that would be the pinnacle of drinking experiences with arguably the very best glass maker in the world, certainly the finest crystal maker. And so
Baccarat
when we, yes,
from
of
France.
course. And when the glass was finished, he handed it to me, and I looked at it, and I said, "Well, it's a little heavy. It's a little thick."
He was
I'm not
very
too sure.
diplomatic, but he said, "Jean-Michel, I'm not sure about the glass." So I went home and cried all night, and I was highly depressed.
So, fast forward to our Alchemy of the Senses tour. Many of you that might be watching visit us on that tour. It was a magical event of food and sensation. And I spent the day with the glass. We're tasting wine with many different groups. We were tasting Burgundy. We were tasting Napa Cabernet. We were tasting Russian River Chardonnay.
Which is pretty amazing for Ken, because
Zinfandel.
he typically spend the night with a glass. But that day he spent the day.
I spent
and
the whole
night.
day, and whole night. And I fell in love, honestly. It's got beautiful weight. You can swirl your wine, or as we like to say in the wine business, volatilize your esters without worrying about the glass falling over. You can swirl it, let go. It's not going to lose its balance. It's got this wonderful knot, and I know there's a technical name for it, but I like to call it the knot where I hold it.
Well, and the English call it the knot. So you heard he's from Scotland originally.
Yes.
So, but the French call it the heart.
And so a great place to hold it. It's got a very large base. You can hold it here. And when you tip the glass back, it really allows the aroma to down your nose and through your throat, which really helps to heighten the experience of what you're doing.
So now you only drink with that.
I only do, and honestly, I had to tell him after that day. I said, Jean-Charles, I have to apologize to you. I made a mistake on your glass. It's actually excellent.
And that's the beauty of Ken. When he thinks, his original statement is not necessarily the one that he believes in now, he will tell you. Like a true Scots, the way it is. But Ken, forgive me, we went on the glass, but you were going on the tangent of Zinfandel, which is such a great history. And it came to the United States, we believe, thanks to the Count of Buena Vista, right?
Yeah, there's many stories that talk about the origin of Zinfandel and how it arrived here, but really it was the Count Augustin Herasti who really, he was the Johnny Appleseed of Zinfandel here on the West Coast, planting it with the help of the Bunchu, the Gunlock family. Those two really were a big part of planting Zinfandel. And when I was born, the road that I lived on was mostly Zinfandel. It was a very big part of the California wine scene. And most wineries, claret, as they called it, was actually Zinfandel.
Interesting. And we obviously, as you can see in the beautiful red room, which comes from Zinfandel Lane. So people love Zinfandel, not only in Sonoma, in the Russian River, in the Dry Creek, but as well in Napa. Now, funny story, dear friends. We can argue on the history. Two people that I love, Mr. Hines, one of the best authors in the history of California wine, and of course, Mr. Sullivan. And we raise our glass to rest his soul. He left us a few months ago. We love Mr. Sullivan because he wrote a phenomenal book on the history of Sonoma and Buena Vista. And he claimed for the origin to arrive via New Jersey by the Count of Buena Vista, who brought it indeed from Croatia. So could it be the truth? What do you think of that wine, Ken? The Sheriffs.
The Sheriffs, to me, is really kind of the classic Sonoma County red field blend. It's a Zinfandel with Petit Syrah, with Grenache, a little bit of Carignan. And this is what the pioneers of the Italian pioneers of Sonoma County did. They planted all of these varietals interspersed together and would vinify them together. We're, of course, a little bit more precise on how we do it, but this really pays homage to those early red blends of the Zinfandel-based California.
And you're thinking Petit Syrah, Syrah, Grenache, and I understand there's a tiny bit of Mission that you love so much.
And Mission is also, you find any old vine vineyard in Sonoma County, it's likely will have several vines of Mission grapes in there.
So Ken, you've been tasting wine all your life. You know wine so well. You know how to sell wine very well. Tell us about what you think of old vine versus new vine. There's a big movement today that in the world define old vines differently. What is your definition of what you think old vine should be?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because when you look at grapes, typically after 30 years, they've lost their effectiveness financially. And so you pull them out, you replant. It makes sense to do that. After 30 years, there becomes a decline in production, but there also becomes this beautiful concentration of fruit that can come from that. So a vine that might have been a vineyard that might have been producing 5 tons will all produce 2 tons, eventually 1 ton, eventually a half a ton. But the concentration is still there. If you've ever had a wild strawberry, they're teeny tiny and they taste amazing, packed with fruit. That's no great. Different than the flavor of one of those large strawberries you buy at the grocery store. And that's what happens to grapes. It's the exact same thing. Many people say, old vine starts at 30. Some say it starts at 50. Some say it starts even at 80. I would say it starts when the winery or vineyard manager makes the decision that economics isn't important to them, that making high quality wine is. And that's when it becomes old vine.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating debate, dear friends, because at the Loach, as an example, Buena Vista 2, we make a wine that our winemaker Brian Maloney loves. It's called Forgotten Vine. He actually named it Forgotten Vine. Those are pre-prohibition grapes and vineyards that are still today producing fantastic quality. So we're talking 1896, 1898, 1902, 1906. So it's still there. So I think it's interesting to give homage. Where do you see Ken Zinfandel going in the United States?
Yes, an interesting question because, in my career, which is over 30 years professionally, of course, as you said.
I thought you were born.
Well, I was, but I'm saying professionally. As 30 years ago, I turned 21. But so
you're really telling us your age.
Yeah, well, maybe it was a little longer, but it's an interesting grape because you can do so many things with it. You can make a late harvest wine. You can make a fortified dessert wine. You can make a rosé out of it. You can make a sparkling wine. You can make a very heavy extracted version of it. You can make a very light Nouveau Beaujolais style wine out of it. It's one of the most versatile grapes that is out there. It blends extremely well, and that's what mostly the Italians and the Croatians have done with it over the years. They are starting to bottle it as Primitivo. And the Croatian word for Zinfandel, while it's very hard when you look at it to pronounce, and I'll give it a shot here, it's Swirljanak Castellania. Castellansky, excuse me.
Castellansky.
Yes.
Ooh, that sounds like Scottish.
And so, people are starting to realize that Zinfandel has something different than just being a blender. Red blends are so popular in America right now that a lot of these great Zinfandel vineyards that we have end up in there. And you can see that we have 2 of them even that we're showing today. But I think, as people discover Zinfandel, there'll be a demand to try some of the versatility, to enjoy the versatility of Zinfandel. It absolutely makes a fantastic sparkling wine.
And do you think it's important to have white Zinfandel, maybe even white Zinfandel, meaning that beautiful rosé we can enjoy, to even white Zinfandel, as we do have white Merlot and some white Cabernet sometimes?
And that's maybe the vagaries of our business. White Zinfandel gets vilified, and it shouldn't be. You can make a beautiful dry rosé, and most of us that are drinking rosé right now, most of the consumers are choosing that light French style, very pale, and Zinfandel makes that style very well. It doesn't have to be sweet. It's beautiful dry. It's not too tannic, which you can see a lot of times in California rosés. It actually makes the best rosé.
Would you argue that Zinfandel rosé could be similar to Grenache or even Cinsault rosé from the south of France?
It's got a little bit more color than Cinsault, certainly, or even the Syrah, as it's not extracted. But style-wise, flavor-wise, what consumers would connect with, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Ken, I know drinking a glass of wine is not too hard for you. Do you need help for this one?
I am getting parched, yes.
Well, let's finish this glass, because I know you can. In life, when you can, you might as well do it. Because now we're going to taste another wine, dear friends, named Chronology. But before we go to Chronology and we talk about the history of time and the meaning of time, Ken, Zinfandel, phenomenal food wine. You're a great chef. You love to grill, you love to cook, You love nature. What would you recommend with Zin?
Yeah, and it really depends on the Zin. You know, as I mentioned, Zin can be so many different things. And I think with Russian River, which we tried earlier, it's a very cool climate. It's a beautiful match to grilled meats that have a little higher fat content.
Okay.
You know, it's got good acidity, which really cuts the fat, and that's something that you want to look for when you're pairing food and wine. And then it's got a juiciness to it as well, much like the meat. So it's a very good pair. It's a good foil and pair at the same time. Now, if you're going with something from Lodi, which is very thick, jammy, rich, you know, I like to do that with cheese, honestly, because jam is such a great pairing with cheese. You can do that with your wine. You know, a nice dry cheese.
What about more simple things, even like pizza and sausage?
Well, I mean, look, the classic pairing, I think, for Zinfandel is a cheeseburger. You know,
really?
Honestly, it's very, that's a great way to do it. Too. Especially if you put a little chill in it, put it in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes before you open it. Zinfandel in a burger is it.
Ooh. Gina, I hope you're listening. We will be trying that soon. Now, Ken, on the world stage, now talking about the positioning of California, I really feel there's an incredible opportunity with Zinfandel to really make it the American passport, the American identity card, the American DNA, to say no one does that flavor profile, no one does that spice note, no one does make a one that could be with Thai food, Indian food, frankly, because it goes very well with those two, as well as all what you've described. So what do you recommend?
It's interesting that you say that, because Zinfandel really isn't grown anywhere else as Zinfandel. I mean, you might find a little bit in Australia, and a little bit might pop up in South America, but the reality of it is California is where it is grown, you know, and it is a passport to California. And it is that style. It's big, it's fruity. When you talk about old world wines in particular, you're often talking about the expression of the place. But with Zinfandel, you're talking about the expression of that fruit. You know, while place matters, it certainly does. It's also about that fruit and the power of it, much like America. You know, big and bold.
Well, that's why we're going to have to invite this lovely Brian Maloney at some stage to tell us a little bit about that forgotten vine, because it will be a lot of fun to really talk about the essence, the roots, and I really believe, you know, Ken, on the question I was asking, I lived, you know, in France at the juncture where we started to really have the region being special and specialize into what they do best. So Burgundy will never venture of anything but Chardonnay Pinot. Rhone varieties. South, more specialized as well. Bordeaux, Loire Valley, Alsace, etc. I feel some areas of California with global warming will become the Zin place.
It's interesting that you say that. You know, the California wine business is very young. You know, Prohibition put a big stop in what we were doing here. And where I grew up, Zinfandel is the perfect thing to grow there. But we grew Chardonnay, we grew Cabernet, we grew Riesling. None of those did really well. It was the Zinfandel that did the very best. And that is, you know, right where Dry Creek and the Russian River come together. Got the right soil, the right climate. And I think that is absolutely true what you're saying, that as California wine business matures, it is becoming easier for us to tell what varietal does very best in what area. You know, and of course global warming will continue to change that map. That's the beauty of maybe changing out your vines every 30 years. You can do that. But
here we go. So talking about the chronology of time, you take us back, you take us forward. What do you think of this one? Because that's timeless in many ways.
Yeah, it's one of the most playful and fun wines that we have in our
dear friends, I'm coming
at,
closer because
Boisset.
Dylan is texting his girlfriend for a date tonight, so he forgot about us for a moment. But he's back. Here he is.
Again, it's another, you know, classic California red blend. But what's so fun and unique about this is it's 9 different varietals from 9 different counties in California. So it's really spanning red wine across all of the growing regions of California. I don't know anyone else that's doing this. And the wine, of course, is rich and lush. It's a great value as well. This is one that we continue to be astounded at how well it sells out in the marketplace.
So Ken, a few more minutes, because we could speak for hours about this topic, and I cannot wait for you to join us again. When you look back, which we did, on the history of California, let's look now forward. The chronology of time, as you could see, it's timeless. But where are we going in those fantastic wines? And what are the big trends? And what should people have at home over the holidays?
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting that you mentioned the trends, because this has been an interesting year, you know, with COVID and people being at home. And one of the things that I've really seen is that families are together enjoying the table and enjoying a glass of wine together. I've seen younger people who had no interest in wine say, hey, I want to try what my grandparents or my parents are having.
Are you talking about your own kids?
Not yet. They're a little young for that, but they're on their way. So that kind of enjoying wine as an everyday evening event, I think, is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah.
You know, we were living in a society that was very fast-paced. You know, you go up to the counter, you order your food, you eat it in 5 minutes, and you walk to the next thing, or get in your car and drive to the next thing. And now we are getting the moment to slow down and to enjoy. And so the trends around that are going to be wines that please everyone at the table. And that's the beauty about Chronology. It has a little something for everyone, a little sweetness, a little tannin, a little bit of acid. It goes with all types of foods. It's the perfect kind of bring people together at your table.
God, isn't he so convincing? This is what we need to have for the holidays then.
I would say.
By the case.
Yeah, of course you want a little variety, and we can help you out with that, with great sparkling wines and white wines as well.
Well, this was such a great discussion with Ken Hoernlein, dear friends. 6th generation Californian. Ken, I want to raise a glass to your fabulous mother. I had the pleasure to meet, of course, and she's probably watching us soon. And to all your family for making you who you are and really building this amazing region that is one of the best places on the planet. And let's never forget, dear friends, Zinfandel is what makes America so unique. Cheers.
Cheers.